Morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So much energy on a gloomy Tuesday morning, but so glad to have you with us this morning. And whether you're here joining us in person or one of the dozens of people joining us online today, welcome. So excited to have you a part of this month's Wake Up West Coast. Before we get started, absolutely want to thank our sponsors that we have this morning. We had a morning mingle sponsor, Lindsay Younglove and Sarah Boss from United Bank. If you didn't get a chance to stop by and see them on the way in, make sure you stop and see them on the way out. They are great partners for the West Coast Chamber, and so excited to have them as sponsors this morning. Will you join me in thanking them? We also have a program sponsor this morning, Consumers Energy. I'm joined by Rich Houdeman, another great friend of the Chamber. And we're going to talk a little bit about things that are going on at Consumers Energy. There's nothing going on, right? Consumers Energy? Not even a little bit. So let's start with a big one. There's a lot of conversation about energy supply, right? And whether it's because of storm damage like we're seeing up north or because of people like me driving electric vehicles and plugging in. Talk to me a little bit about what you all are doing to make sure that there's energy available for all of us.
Well, thanks a lot, Jody. Thanks for having us this morning. Got a great program. It's really nice to talk with Grace at the table there. She has a lot of fans, by the way. A lot of people coming up to talk to Grace.
True.
So just I think it's really important to understand, obviously Campbell's gotten a lot of attention in the room in the area. And I just, Zeeland's probably not getting the love that it should. That's a great plant we're investing heavily in. But we have about 5 plants around the state that are like Zeeland. What enabled us to close Campbell a little earlier was the fact that the Covert plant down the lake was available. And we purchased that, which is almost like for like for Campbell. And so that really is a great power source for us. All that power was going to the eastern seaboard. So now we're going to keep that Michigan-made power in Michigan at much less cost. So we have, like I said, those assets around the state. And, we love being here in Zeeland. We work great with Andy, Tim, and Mayor Kleinstra. They've been great partners working with that. And we're going to put another 50 megawatts in there this year.
Love it. So we're seeing a wide variety of energy sources, right? So what are we seeing come online, and will we see that impact our bills in a positive way sometime soon?
Yeah, it's right. Like, so, okay.
No pressure, just a couple of friends, right? Nobody's listening.
I hear you. It's so what we're seeing in Michigan is, we feel our numbers show that we're going to save about $600 million over 20 years for closing Campbell. And but we are reinvesting some of that for our 2 million customers. We're having the most violent storms in the last 10 years in our company's history. So 8 of our last 10 catastrophic storms have been in the last 10 years. So in our 130-year history, Michigan's weather is changing, and we need to step up our game to keep the lights on for our customers. So we're on a big mission to do that, and we're doing that a lot of different ways through smart grid investments. We're trying some strategic undergrounding, and really just trying to do smart things to try to accomplish those goals.
Love that. So last question, Rich. I so appreciate the partnership that we've had, and Consumers has been very engaged, and it feels very deliberate choice that you all have made.
Yeah.
Why is it that you've chosen to be a part of the West Coast Chamber?
Well, you guys do something so well here.
Wait, what was that?
Well, honestly, this county is really special. You have 10 of the top 10% of school districts in the state. You've grown, like we opened Campbell in 1962. You've grown by 3 times since then. You're 300,000. We opened at 100,000, and you're just growing like crazy. And between you and the great work you do to create a high quality of life here, and then the base jobs that Lakeshore Advantage services is such a great relationship, and I love it that you're doing more and more together. I think we all could learn a lot around the state from that relationship. So I wasn't paid to say that. It's genuine.
Looking at you, Jennifer Owens.
Hey. So anyway,
yeah,
we just appreciate the partnership.
Fantastic, and we appreciate you as well. Would you join me in thanking Rich and the team at Consumers? So if you come to a chamber event, we're always going to work in a little bit of networking, and that is true this morning as well. So we're going to give you a few moments to chat with those at your table. This morning, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself, your name, your company, and what do you most enjoy about the place that you get to work. All right, with that, we'll let you get started. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you had a good opportunity to get to know some new people this morning or get to know your coworkers even better, gain some insight. So it's my pleasure to be able to introduce today's speaker, Grace Gavin, co-founder of No Honesty. At the West Coast Chamber, we talk all the time about the fact that our culture is open and honest. It's the only way that we know how to be. And when we saw Grace's information and learned more about what she does, we knew that it was the perfect fit for this morning. I did not know, though, at the time that we were setting this up, that it would be her birthday on the day that she came to speak to us. So I promised her I wouldn't make you all sing happy birthday to her, but we're thrilled that she would honor us by being here anyway, let alone on her birthday. So with that, please join me in welcoming Grace Gavin.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. You can hear me okay? So, yes, today is my birthday. It's also tax day, so if you have any funny IRS jokes, I've probably heard them all, but I still want to hear them again, so feel free to come tell me them afterwards. And on the spirit of it being my birthday, I just kind of want to know who's in the room here with me today. So just by a show of hands, how many of you love birthdays, love celebrating them, you're all about it? Okay, a decent amount of you. Now, where are my people on the other side? We're like, I'm not telling anybody my birthday. Don't look at me. I'm not trying to celebrate. Who are my other people in the room? Okay. All right. If you got team members, take note of that. Okay, that's important to know. But really, it's such an honor to be here with you this morning celebrating my birthday. You're all giving me the most wonderful gift, the gift of your time. So thank you so much for that, and I want to be a good steward of it. So what we're going to be talking about today, let's make sure we switch. All right, great. We are talking about mastering the skills of healthy communication. And before we get into that, I just want to share just a little bit more of who I am so you know who's up here talking to you. So like Jody said, my name is Grace Gavin. I'm the co-founder and integrator at No Honesty. I'm an open and honest expert. That's on the work side of things, really blessed to do what I do. On the personal side of things, I also recently got married in June of last year. You'll see my husband, Eric, up there. We are still married, so it's going well. And you'll also see our golden doodle, Nova. She is like every other golden doodle, absolutely crazy, and we love her to death. And then the last thing that I love to share about myself is that I am the last of 8 kids, and I was born and raised on a dairy farm. And growing up in that family business, I saw a lot of ways that communication could go well in a business. And I also saw the ways that it could go really poorly and be really unhealthy and affect the team and then ultimately affect the business. And so that's part of why I do what I do today, because I want to help teams have that healthy communication. I want to help us be the most effective that we can be, and maybe, just maybe, experience a little bit less chaos in our lives. Wouldn't that be nice if our lives were just a little bit less chaotic? And there's a quote that I love to share that I think goes along with this well, and it's from Professor Robert Fry. He was a GVSU professor. I feel a little bit bad saying that on the Hope campus, so please forgive me on that. But he was also a Whirlpool exec, so he's seen the world from a lot of different angles. And he said that the single biggest issue with companies is, I bet you can guess, communication. The single biggest issue is communication. It is not talent or strategy or your operations, communication. Because what do all of those things have in common? It's your people's ability to communicate, or maybe not communicate in some cases. Maybe it's unhealthy, maybe it's miscommunication, it's confusing, there's not clarity there. And so that is the single biggest issue that we face in our companies and our organizations, is our ability to communicate. So that's what I want to help you here this morning, is develop those skills to have healthy communication and to be able to carry that forward with you throughout the rest of your day, into your team and into your organizations. And so there's a very, very simple equation that I'm going to share because I'm not a huge math person. And so I like to keep things simple. And what we're after, like I said, is healthy communication, which in my world is really real communication. So I'm going to use those words interchangeably. And how we get to real or healthy communication is this. It is open plus honest equals real communication. Open plus honest equals real communication. And we're going to think about those two words maybe a little bit differently than how you hear them out in the world today. Because we say open and honest all the time. I'm going to be open and honest with you. What does that actually mean? What am I actually saying there? And so that is what we're going to spend our time talking about today and developing those skills. So I want to start first with the honest side of the equation. And if you want to, for those joining us in person, there's a handout in front of you. You can use that, fill it out, take notes on that. If you've got a photogenic memory, I'm jealous of you, and you'll just remember it from there. But starting on the honesty side of things, as we define it, honesty is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. I'm going to say that again. Honesty is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. If I don't have the real you, what do I have? What am I working with? Some of my clients will say fake, phony, facade. But what's certain is that if we don't have you being honest, if you're not being truly and freely yourself, if we're not clear on what you want, how you feel, well, then the work gets a lot more difficult, doesn't it? I had a client a couple months ago that when I bring them together and we do workshops, one of the questions that I ask them, I say, what is the most important thing that you need to be honest about? What is the most important thing you need to be honest about? And this team had recently hired a new individual, a really, like a rock star of a player. The kind of person where you can't believe you got them on your team and you're so excited. You ever hired somebody like that? You're like, yes, woohoo, we got her. That's the kind of individual that they hired. And so we're going around the table, and I can see as individuals are sharing, we get to her, and I can see her kind of hesitate. She's like, And I look at her and I say, look, we got to have you as you are at this table. We need you to be 100% honest. And so she kind of took a deep breath, and she said, I need to be honest about my capacity on this team because you all hired me in a full-time position, but then I've been asked to take on additional projects, join more meetings, generate extra reports, and I've been saying yes to those because I want to show you that I'm a team player, that I'm excited to be here just as you're all excited to have me. And so I wanted to say yes, but it's really stretching my capacity. And I'm starting to lose track of the things you actually hired me to do. And I looked around at the rest of the team after she had said that, and they were kind of shocked. Like, oh, we had no idea. She hadn't said anything. She had just done the, yup, I can do that. Yup, I can do that. They had no idea that they were stretching her, and they were going to push her to the brink of burnout if that continued. And so then the team had an opportunity to have a real conversation about what is our actual capacity at this table? What do we really need to take on? Because we don't want to lose this individual we just hired. We need her. We're excited for the expertise she brings to the team. And so at that point, then we're having a real conversation. And we're not just hiding behind the facades and pretending everything's fine. Now, I got to be really clear here. When I'm talking about honesty, I am not talking about being brutally honest, okay? Yeah, some of you are familiar with that. Either somebody's been brutally honest with you, or maybe you've been brutally honest with somebody else. But I want to say this, I want to be so clear here. When I'm telling you to be honest with your teams, going back to them in your organizations, what I am not giving you permission to do is say, all right, Grace said to be honest, so I'm going to let it rip. No, that's not going to work. And the reason that's not going to work is I want you to imagine your brutal honesty like a dagger in your hand. And what happens when you come at somebody with a dagger? You're going to be brutally honest with them. Well, their natural reaction is they're going to lean back. They're going to get defensive. Whatever happens there, I can guarantee that they're not actually going to hear what you have to say. And so it is not a good delivery of honesty. It is not the way to have healthy communication. And so what I would encourage you to do, to think differently about it, is to be 100% honest, absolutely important. We need that in our teams. And 100% loving. Say what needs to be said, be clear about it, and deliver it in such a way that it can actually be received in a loving manner, giving that care and respect for your team. That's how it's going to be received better, okay? Now, this is one half of the equation, okay? You can think about this as the me, myself, and I side of things. We love honesty. We're typically a little bit better about it. I'm going to share some numbers with that a little bit later. But now we got to go to the other side, okay? So now we're going to talk about openness. And this is the skill that is most difficult for, I'll say, most individuals, right? I'm not going to say 100%. But this is the skill that we really have to focus on building here because it's very difficult. And I want to encourage you to think about it differently here today because a lot of times we take openness to mean being an open book or being transparent. If you ask me, I think that's all wrapped up in the honesty side of things. And so openness, as we define it, is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. I'll say that again. Openness is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. I just want you to think for a second, how well do you think that you are doing this today? How well do you think your team is doing this today? How well do you think your organization as a whole is doing this today? We had a client a couple of years ago. I want you to imagine they were a three-person leadership team who was also the three-person ownership team. So you can kind of see where it's already going to get a little bit messy with this team. We had the visionary, we had the COO, and then we had the lead creative. They were a marketing organization. And this team had what I'll call a very unhealthy communication pattern. They would come together every quarter and they would review what happened last quarter, make the plans for the next 90 days. If you're familiar with EOS, it was their quarterly. And what would happen every time in their quarterly is that one of the individuals would throw out an idea, and then the other two would jump in and cut the idea down. So, for example, let's say the visionary said, we need to increase sales by 20%. And then the COO would jump in and say, well, that's not going to work. We would have to hire another salesperson. We can't afford that. And the lead creative would jump in and say, the services we're offering aren't going to get us to that number at this point. And they would do this to each other over and over and over until they kind of got to a boiling point, I'll say. And they would have to take a break. They would come back together. They would get back into that same pattern, hit the boiling point, have to take a break. This would happen every single quarter. And every single quarter, they would leave with a plan that they agreed to. And I say agreed to in quotes because nobody was really bought into it. So the likelihood that it's going to happen, not great. And every quarter, they would come back together with lackluster results. A lot of their projects, their rocks weren't complete, and profitability was suffering because of that. Quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. You can start to feel how that might weigh on you, might weigh on your team. Then comes the quarter of COVID. So not only do we have these patterns and these stressors and these issues, but now we've got all of the other stuff of COVID added on top of it. And they get back into that same unhealthy pattern, but this time it hits that boiling point and it bubbles over. And I want you to think about the worst things that you could say to a team member and then take it a step further. I'm talking insults, swear words. It was ugly. And they left that quarterly with, again, a plan that they agreed to, but it was different this time. They'd broken the trust at this point. And they started to have conversations about, can we even do this? Can we work together? Do we shut the business down? Do we split it into thirds? I don't think this is going to work. And so they come back for their next quarterly, and they start to get into that same pattern again. They're like, we'll give this a try again. And they get into that same pattern. And then the visionary finally had this moment of what I'll say is brilliance. And he said, I don't want to hear all the reasons we can't anymore. I want to hear we can if. We can hit the sales projections if we add another person or if we change the process. We can get this operational side of the business running if we do these things. We can if. And what the visionary really did in that moment is he finally invited openness into the conversation. Because that team was being honest before, brutally so at some points. But they weren't actually listening to each other. They weren't actually pausing what they wanted, what they thought their team needed for each other. And they finally invited openness into the conversation. It transformed how they communicated together. They gave each other the opportunity to be heard and respected, which meant that by the end of that quarter, they finally left with a plan that they were all bought into because they believed in it. They debated, they worked through the tough issues rather than just shoving them aside. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the power of openness. And just consider for a moment where you could invite that into your organization and into your team. All right, so we've got the definitions. We understand both sides of the equation. Now I want to take us a step further, and I want to introduce some data. Who are my data lovers out there? Like, show me some numbers, Grace. Come on, let's do this. All right, so to do that, we have our Pursuit of Honesty assessment. So if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to our website. It's a free assessment to take. But the reason that I bring it up is this is where I'm going to be sharing the data from. And we created the assessment to get your real-time data on your level of openness and honesty. And then we break it down further into your personal life and your work life, because sometimes those are different, aren't they? And so what we're finding right now from the assessment, I'll let people finish getting that QR code. It's also on our website. You'll find it at nohonesty.com. But what we're finding right now, and the way that I want to think about this is in terms of a 5-day work week, okay? So what we're finding right now is an average openness of 66%. This is just across all individuals. I saw Sue's face. She's like, oh, I don't know if that's good. Not great. An average openness of 66%. So if we take the inverse of that, that means that on average, about 34% of the time, we are not being open to the people around us. We are simply not listening to them. Now, if we take that in terms of our team, and if we're working together 5 days a week, that means we lose just under 2 days where we are not accessing real communication, because we are missing one half of the entire equation. So it's not really healthy communication. Then on the honesty side of things, we're tracking an average honesty of 71%. A little bit better, right? Because that's the me side of things. Our ego loves to focus on ourselves. It's just part of our human nature. So we're a little bit better at being honest. But again, the inverse of that means that about 29% of the time, we're not being honest. We're not being truly and freely ourselves. And so in total, we lose about 3 days out of a 5-day work week where we're not getting to real communication. And so if you're sitting there and you're thinking, why are my meetings so difficult? Why do projects seem to take forever? What is going on here? I don't understand. I would pose to you that maybe this is part of it. Maybe this gets down to the root of it, that we got to work on our communication skills as a team so we can move so much faster. One of the things I hear from my clients all the time is, man, our ability to solve the real problems has gotten so much quicker now that we have these skills. Okay, so that's the data. We have the definitions, we have the data. Now I want to take it even further, and I want to talk about how these two skills show up in the world of work, the kind of behaviors and experiences we see. And so to do that, we're going to look at the open and honest model. Here's where I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation from all of you. So feel free to just shout it out when I ask you the question. No need to raise your hand. But what the open and honest model does is it answers the question, what is it like to experience someone in each one of these quadrants? Okay? So no wrong answers here. We're just going to go through them one by one. And we're going to start with low honesty and low openness. So think for a moment, what is it like to experience somebody who's not so great at being truly and freely themselves and not so great at listening without reservation? What's that experience like? Uncomfortable? Frustrating? Good, maybe one more? Unsafe, yeah. Here's what we see. We experience these individuals as oblivious, disengaged, untrustworthy, and unreliable. I'm going to say that again. Oblivious, disengaged, untrustworthy, and unreliable. That's a really tough spot to be. It's also a really tough team member to have in your organization. And so I really hope that you don't have anybody who shows up in that quadrant. But I'm betting that you might. All right, let's go up on the model now. What about somebody who has high honesty but low openness? So they're really great at speaking into what they want and how they feel. Awesome. But they're not so great at putting their needs, their wants on pause for somebody else. What is that experience like? I heard narcissistic, a little bit louder. Arrogant, critical, domineering, abrasive. Yeah, so whoever said arrogant, ding, ding, ding. Here's what we see. We experience them as aggressive, defensive, arrogant, and disregards others. Aggressive, defensive, arrogant, and disregards others. Now, I want to be clear when I'm going through these quadrants, it's not that anybody necessarily intends to show up this way, but it's important to recognize this because this very well could be some of your team's experience of you or an experience of another individual. And what typically happens when I talk about this quadrant in particular is that there's usually a face that pops up in your mind. Yeah, please don't say their name out loud. That's, especially if they're not in the room here with us, it's really not fair to them. But I would encourage you to maybe bring this back to them as a tool and say, hey, I learned this at Wake Up West Coast. Where do you experience me in here? Oh, okay, interesting. Here's where I'm experiencing you. And now your goal there, some of you are like, I don't think that would work out very well, Grace. I hear you. Your goal there, especially if this is somebody on your team, is to help them develop their skill of openness. Just help them navigate that a little bit more. Because again, these are skills we're building. It's like muscles in the gym. I don't know if you've ever gone to the gym and expect to come out looking like a bodybuilder. It doesn't really work that way, which is really unfortunate. But we keep going back to the gym anyways. All right, let's take a kitty corner now. What about somebody who has low honesty but high openness? So they're not so great at being truly and freely themselves, but they are great at putting their needs, their wants on pause for somebody else. Awesome at that. What's that experience of that individual like? Pushover? What else? People pleaser? Yeah. Well, another one I get here sometimes is doormat, which is really tough. It's kind of a mean thing, but I've heard it. So here's what we see. We experience them as passive, stagnant, indecisive, and insecure. Passive, stagnant, indecisive, and insecure. Also a really tough spot to be as an individual. And I think we're really clear on why those who end up in the aggressive, defensive, arrogant, disregards others quadrant are really damaging to our teams. They get labeled the loudmouths, the spotlight's on them. If you're in a meeting with them, good luck getting a word in edgewise. They're really detrimental to our team health and our ability to have healthy communication. Now, what I would also say is that those kitty corner can be equally as detrimental to our team health and communication. And why might I say that? Why might I say they're equally as damaging? yes, their talents aren't being used. We've hired them for a specific expertise, skill, or ability. Like imagine if you hired like a marketing person. And then you're talking about, what is our marketing plan? What are we going to do? And everybody on the team throws out ideas, but you don't hear anything from the marketing person. Well, that's kind of a problem. Where's their expertise? Where's their voice? What's going on there? And so we got to watch out for that. And the other piece, too, here is that when you get individuals that get stuck in either of these quadrants, it can become a really unhealthy dynamic. And so if you see that happening in your organizations, in your teams at all, please, we got to talk about that and we got to work through that, because that unhealthiness, that toxicity sometimes it can turn into, won't just stay between those two individuals. It will spread, and that's going to affect your culture. And so please, I'm begging you, you got to work through that, help them develop some skills there. All right, final quadrant, what about high honesty and high openness? This is my favorite one for, I think, maybe obvious reasons, but somebody who's got the skills to be truly and freely themselves and listen without reservation. How do we experience that individual? Leadership? Yeah, I like that one. I haven't heard that before, Stu. What else? Trustworthy? Impactful? Yes. Ding, ding. Here's how we experience them. We experience them as engaging, high trust, clear and actionable, with an ease of communication. Engaging, high trust, clear and actionable, with an ease of communication. Whew! Isn't that where we all want to be? Isn't that where we want all of our teams to be? That is healthy communication right there. That's what we want. And so when you take the assessment, or you have your team take it later, on page 2 it'll actually plot you on where you show up on the open and honest model. And what's really important about this model and your results in general, as I keep saying it, but it begs repeating, is that these are skills to build. So if you get results and you're like, wow, this is lower than I thought it was going to be, or if you get results that are higher, you're like, fantastic. Either way, we're still building skills. And what your results show you is where you end up on the model a majority of the time. What that means is that for all of us here in this room today, we'll show up in one of them a majority of the time, but we will shift throughout all of these quadrants at some point. For some of us, it's within a year. For some of us, it's a month. For some of us, it's within a day. We are shifting throughout these quadrants. And so it's not about beating ourselves up or judging ourselves for where we find ourselves, but it's really about recognizing it and then saying, okay, what do I got to do here to move? Do I need to re-up my honesty? Do I need to re-up my openness? Maybe both? What's getting in the way here? And so that's where I want to take you next, is we're going to talk about the two barriers, the two divides that get in the way of our ability to be honest and our ability to be open, okay? So we're going to start on the honest side of things. And what blocks us from being honest is fake you. Fake you is the facade we project rather than being 100% honest. Say that again. Fake you is the facade we project rather than being 100% honest. When I'm teaching this to my clients, and really when I'm teaching it to you now, this is one of our in-the-moment practices, because my hope is that you develop an ability to recognize when fake you is happening in the moment and get rid of it. And so what fake you can look like is a million different ways for as many people as there are on the planet. But it can look like not admitting to a mistake. It can look like skirting the truth a little bit, telling a little bit of a white lie. It can look like pretending that you're not mad at somebody when you really are. Like, how are you? Good, great, we're fine. It's all fine and dandy. It can look like not speaking up, not adding your voice to the conversation when you do have something to say. So it comes up in all of these different ways. And again, if we go back to the numbers, we're seeing this happen about 29% of the time for the average individual. For you, maybe it's more. For somebody else, maybe it's less. But that's the average that we're finding. And I think about fake you, for me, when I saw it happening, when I finally recognized when it was happening, is when I was going to networking events. When I first started in my professional career. I had to go to a lot of them, and I don't know, there was just something about them that I found exhausting. I didn't find them to be very fun, and I wasn't making any great connections either. And so I started to look at, well, I know I'm probably going to have to attend a lot of them throughout the rest of my professional career based on what I've chosen, what I want to do. And so I was looking, I was like, I got to figure out what's going on here. And what I realized was happening, what was leaving me so exhausted, not enjoying these events, is because I was showing up as fake you. I was showing up as what I thought was the perfect version of a business person. Does that exist? No, but sometimes we like to pretend or think that it does. And so I was wearing the uncomfortable blazers, the shoes. I was having the conversations of, how are you? Good. How are you? Good. What do you do? Blah, that is exhausting to me. And other people enjoy that, and that's fantastic, but it wasn't working for me. And so I looked at it and said, all right, what's going on here? What do I need to switch here? And so very rarely will you ever catch me in a blazer ever again. I think I maybe have one in my closet. I'm kind of a leather jacket girl now. I ask more depthy questions when I can, trying to understand what brings you to the work that you do today. What's been the best part of your day? Those types of conversations. And I just worked over time to get rid of that fake me that was showing up because it was exhausting. Because imagine you have to hold your hand out all day long. It doesn't take very long for your arm to get tired because you're expending so much energy projecting this facade. And then I started to realize, well, of course I'm not making any great connections. And then, of course, no real business is coming from it because people weren't connecting with me. They were connecting with this facade. And so they didn't get to know who I was. We didn't develop any real relationships from that. And so I've been able to flip that to the point now where I'll say for the most part, I really enjoy networking events. I don't leave them exhausted. I have interesting conversations. I get to meet fun new people. I get to see old faces that I know before. But I just want you to consider for a moment, where are you projecting the facade? Where is fake you showing up for you in your day-to-day life, in your team? And where is it hurting your ability to have healthy, real communication? Because I guarantee you it's showing up in some way, somehow for all of us. It's about recognizing it and getting rid of it. Okay. Now, that is on the honest side of things. So that's what blocks us from being honest. You got to watch out for it. Let's talk about what blocks us from being open. And quite simply, what blocks us from being open is the wall. The wall is the divide we put between ourselves and others rather than being 100% open. The wall is the divide we put between ourselves and others rather than being 100% open. Again, this is another one of our in-the-moment practices because I want you to develop this skill to recognize when it's happening and get rid of it. Average, 34% of the time we're doing this. And so when you think about the wall, I want you to, quite literally in front of you, I want you to see a brick wall. And Jody, what happens when I put up a brick wall between you and I? You can't see me. We're not having a conversation. Nothing's really going on anymore. And we're doing this to people all the time. We put up the wall when we disagree with what somebody has to say, when there's a difference in values, when somebody on our team brings a new idea to us, but their last idea was kind of terrible. So we're like, they probably don't have any good ideas at this point. The last one was terrible. Well, maybe, but maybe that was the innovative idea we needed to save a project or to move us forward. And if we're not open to it, if we're not listening to it, we are going to miss out on it. Another way that I see the wall happening for leaders and for teams is when we talk about multitasking, especially when it comes to technology. And so if I'm talking to my team member, but imagine this is my phone, by the way, I'm saying, yep, Yep, I see what you're saying. Yep, let's keep going. Well, I'm not 100% open. I'm not 100% listening to what you have to say because I'm trying to multitask. And we're doing that to our team members all the time, especially in this day and age. And really, our attention nowadays is a commodity. There are people vying for our attention all the time. And so when you can give the gift of being 100% open, even just for a few minutes to a team member, you are handing them a very, very precious gift. You are helping them feel heard and respected, which, by the way, this stat, it blows my mind every time I share it. I really hope we're going to change the tide on this. But we feel heard in our day-to-day lives only about 5% of the time. Yeah, I saw some eyeballs. They're like, what? Yeah, we only feel heard about 5% of our day. So can you imagine if you just focused, if you really heard what your team member had to say, and you helped bump that up to 10%? Still not a ton, but man, we're doubling it. The numbers are good there. And so can we develop that? Can we help our team members feel heard and respected? Can we put down the wall? Because, by the way, it's not just about our team members and those in our organization, but if I put up a wall here because I disagree, and we have a difference of values here, and there's a new idea here that I don't like, well, what happens all of a sudden? All of a sudden, I'm surrounded by these brick walls. And so not only am I stopping the communication this way, but I'm stopping any connection, any real relationships, because now I'm isolated, and I'm surrounded by all these walls that I've built up instead of the people in my life. And so it's no wonder that we have a loneliness and isolation epidemic in our country, to the point where I think I saw it's equivalent to about smoking a pack of cigarettes a day that leads to premature death. It's a real serious issue that we're dealing with, okay? So I want you to just consider, where are you putting up the wall, and where is it maybe not helping your team? Where is it hurting your ability to communicate, to move forward, to really hear what your team members have to say? Okay? All right. So we've gone through the definitions, you have the data, we did the open and honest model, you're clear on what it looks like. We know the barriers that get in the way, fake you and the wall. Please watch out for them, get rid of them. They are toxic and pervasive, and they just build and build the more we let them go. Now you might be sitting there thinking, okay, Grace, this is great information, but how do I get started? What do I do here? Well, I'm going to share one last practice with you that's one of our Forging Ahead practices where you can take out today and start having healthy, real communication. And that is the agreement. And so I encourage you to either write it down or take a picture of it. But the agreement is a simple, proven script that we have developed that you can use at the beginning of any relationship or conversation that's going to get you to real, healthy communication much faster, okay? And so, can I use you as an example? Can I model it with you? What's your name? Dana. Okay, Dana, you don't have to do anything. Just sit there. Dana, will you agree with me on how we're going to communicate? I want you to be 100% honest, meaning I want you to be truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. I promise I will be 100% open to it. I will listen without reservation. I will put my needs and wants on pause for you. And in return, I will be honest with you, and I ask that you be completely open to it. That's the whole thing. It takes all of, 10, 15 seconds. But now we have some pretty clear expectations on the kind of communication, the kind of conversation that we're going to have going forward. Because sometimes that can be the biggest barriers. We just don't clarify with our teams, this is the expectation, this is how we're going to communicate together. And by the way, it's not necessarily a one-time thing. And so now that Dana and I have in place, it's a living, breathing agreement where she can come back to me and she can say, hey, Grace, I feel like you weren't being 100% honest with me. What's going on? What's the deal here? Or I can say, hey, I feel like you weren't 100% open. What's going on? And we can have a conversation about it and hold ourselves accountable to it. Because again, these are skills we're building. So we are not going to be amazing and great at them immediately. I'm still working on them every single day. But what it does is it helps us have language around that. It helps us talk about it and get really clear on what we want to have going forward together as a team. Okay? All right, we're going to get to hopefully maybe a question or two in just a second. But if you want to go further with this or you want to have a conversation, this is everything that we covered, by the way. So we covered a lot. If you're like, whew, I feel like I got a lot of information today. I've done my learning for the day. Check. You did, because we went through a lot. You know the equation, open plus honest equals real communication. You know what honesty is. You know what openness is. We talked about the assessment and the data, the open and honest model. You know what gets in the way, fake you and the wall. Then you have the agreement. And by the way, if you're up for it, to take a little challenge or homework from me, on your sheets, I would love for you to write down just one name that you can do the agreement with today. Who's one person in your life, in your team, that you can go test, that you can go work on the skill of healthy communication, that you can say, hey, I learned this thing today. Will you try it out with me? Who's one person that you can do that with? That's my homework for you today if you're willing to take it up. All right, so now I really am coming down to the end of my time. So thank you so much. And if you want to go deeper with this, you want to have a conversation, these are just a couple of ways to engage. So you can take the assessment, like I said, that's free on our website. I love talking about this stuff all the time. And so if you're sitting there thinking, man, I wish my team was here to talk about this, if you scan that QR code, fill out the information, I will come to your team and we'll talk about this for a free 60 minutes. You can ask any questions you want. I'll share about how I teach teams, and we can talk through what skills we need to develop on this team. And then lastly, I don't usually do this, but because this is my backyard, I love West Michigan, and y'all are awesome, and think of it as like a birthday gift from me to you. I prefer giving gifts to people rather than receiving them, so this is great. But if you want a free hardcover copy of No Honesty, just come see me afterwards. All I need is your mailing address, your contact info, and my team and I will get that mailed out to you because we really just want to spread this work and make West Michigan the strongest, most healthy it can be when it comes to communication. With that being said, Hannah or Jody, do we have any time for one, maybe two questions? Okay, great. And if you have a question that's a little bit more of a sensitive nature, you don't want to say it in public with people, that's okay, it happens. That's my email, that's my cell. Please feel free to reach out. I love talking about this, like I said. Hannah, anybody have any questions? Anything goes, right here.
Thanks for being with us this morning.
Yeah.
So my question is there some nuance? Well, I know that you'll say yes, there's nuance. So my question, though, is on nuance when it comes to communicating in an open and honest way, particularly for those of us who supervise other people. I'm wondering if there's, like, what you would say is some nuance around leading teams in open and honest ways without expecting them to carry our emotional stuff, any kind of, challenges we're having maybe with superiors or other people in the community. Like, how do we communicate in open and honest ways that are healthy? Mm-hmm. Do you kind of know what I'm trying to get? Yeah.
I'll do my best to answer it, and then you tell me if I didn't get it right, okay? So I think about it as, to keep it the most healthy communication, where does the issue or where does the conversation need to be had? And so if it's an issue or a conversation that you need to have with a direct report, then just have it with that direct report. If it's somebody that you need to have on the same level as you appear, have it there. Don't bring it to your team. That's going to create unnecessary drama that we don't need to have. Then if it's a conversation you need to have with the whole team, then obviously have it there. And the other way that I think about protecting your team, because sometimes as leaders, as managers, we get told information about the organization that we're not quite allowed to share. And so I think about it as being, how can you be as honest as you can be as soon as you can be? And then from that side of things, for your team, is just encouraging them and helping them develop this skill. For leaders, this is where openness becomes really, really important, because if we want our team members to be honest with us, we want them to tell us what's going on, what they're struggling with, then we have to have that ability, that skill, where they can come to us and they can feel safe doing that. That's where kind of psychological safety comes into it. That's a big old huge definition that gets really complicated for people, so I like to simplify and just say being as open as you can be. Does that answer it?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Also, happy birthday.
Thank you. I think I saw a hand here. And then whenever we're out of time, somebody just cut me off. Great.
Hi, thank you. You started to touch on it there. When you work in organizations where they're fear-based or it's not safe, and you have leadership that says one thing, does another continually, how do you handle that with this model as an employee or a leader within that organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I start working with organizations, one of my requirements is that I start working with leadership, because if they're not bought into this, if they're not working on it, then it's not fair to the rest of the employees. I can't go to somebody below with the power dynamic and say, hey, be open and honest, but your leadership isn't doing it. So that's a really key part. And then the other part too I say is, look, leadership is working on developing these skills, and so they're not gonna get it right all of the time. But if you're out there and you're looking around at the organization you're in and you're saying, oh man, we don't have these skills, we struggle with this, my thought is always, okay, what can I do to help change this? And if the answer is nothing, or it's difficult and it's a hard hill to climb and it's not going to be possible, then maybe I need to find a different organization that does invest in being open and honest, because they're out there. Your West Coast Chamber is one of them. There's many other clients that I work with, but that's a consideration. And then if you're a leader and the rest of your team's not ready to do it, how do you lead by example? And how do you develop them and show them the value of this? Does that answer? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Great questions.
Grace, thank you. You've given us a ton to think about today. I was fast and furiously scribbling my notes this morning, and I'm sure my team is like, oh, I'm going to hear about this later. Because open and honest, right?
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah.
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for being with us today. Thank you as well to United Bank and Consumers Energy for sponsoring today's event. If you didn't already stop at the table on the way in, make sure you stop and see Lindsay, drop a business card in. They're actually giving away some West Coast cash. Is there a better gift? So make sure you stop by and see Lindsay before you head out. Next month, we'll be back, but in a different format. It is Leadership Live next month, and that will be happening on Friday, not Tuesday, May 9, and at Engedi Church. And we will be joined by Mike Nowakowski. Let's take a listen to what Mike's going to be telling us.
Remember a character named Bob Parr. Bob Parr was a superhero. He was known as Mr. Incredible. But there was some public backlash back when he was really acting as Mr. Incredible, which forced him into hiding, and he had to take this civilian ID where he was working as an office worker in this mundane job. I want to share with you at this event on May 9th at 10:30 about how you take a Bob Parr within your organization and create the opportunity for him to shine as a superhero again. And it's really about that dynamic of the relationship between his manager and himself, and how you unlock this authentic human connection so that these people can shine. We have organizations full of Bob Parrs. Let's get those superheroes working for us again. Let's stand out as unmistakable companies. See you May 9th at 10:30.
Love it. So join us May 9. Learn how to get that inner superhero out and making an impact at your organization. All right, one last thing before we go. My favorite day of the year is coming up. Hannah's celebrating in the back of the room. On Wednesday, May 14, it is Community Impact Day. If you have not already signed up to help on that day, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's our goal this year to have 2,025 volunteers serving here locally for 2025. We're really creative. And so we'd love for you to be a part of it. We have over 1,600 people already registered here locally. A cool thing that we're doing this year that we'd love for you to be a part of is that we've expanded this across the state. So we have 8 other chambers joining us for Community Impact Day on the same day, same time, same blue t-shirts across the state. So we already have over 3,000 people signed up. Be a part of it. Be a part of making an impact. We're going to turn our little ripples of influence here into tidal waves of impact across West Michigan and beyond. So join us, take a minute, sign up, bring your teammates, bring your family members. It's a great day. So with that, I'll say thank you very much for being here today, and go make it a remarkable day. Thanks, everyone.